Hello, welcome to Clear, Fair and Not Misleading podcast. I'm Wayne,
And hi, I'm Gareth.
and we thought we'd do a slightly different take this time on previous podcasts. So we've been doing these for a little while, a good number of months, and we've covered lots of technical, regulatory stuff, implementation stuff about financial promotion approvals. But today, given that we've got a new market segment, we've got a whole bunch of new clients, some different stuff going on, we thought we'd just talk a little bit about those bits and pieces. And then maybe just out of interest for people who want to know what it was like launching a business, really, from the two of us who've been doing this for probably 18 months, 2 years now in anger, a bit about that and what we've learned.
Seasoned veterans now, Wayne. 18 months.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's an interesting point, that, but we'll come on to that later. I don't want to preempt and talk about things too quick. So, in terms of new clients, Gareth, do you want to talk a bit about two angles to that, I guess, aren't there? There's the
Mhm.
crypto side and how that market has shifted a little bit for us, and then the funds piece.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Wayne. And just to add, I suppose, hopefully, this sort of behind the scenes look at the business more than the sort of front end regulations will be, interesting, and maybe it will make us better podcast hosts. But let's see. So yeah, let's talk about the new segments. Let's start with crypto. Um, my sense has always been that since this regime came into play, the financial promotions regime for crypto assets, that it favoured those very large institutions who were able to afford to play effectively because there are very few approvers in the market. The cost of those services was quite high, prohibitive, and really, if we think about one of the FCA's objectives to increase competition in the marketplace, certainly it would increase competition as far as UK authorized registered firms here suddenly facing competition from people who could, under the regulatory regime, market in from abroad. But it really only did that for a select band of clients, those very large ones who had deep pockets. And it always just felt wrong to me that we could never make it sort of work financially for those smaller clients, that we were effectively closing off the market to those clients. Because I've always believed that just because you're small doesn't mean you can't do things properly and well. And so, uh, you know, I think it's fair to say, Wayne, that we did a bit of soul searching, didn't we? And um, effectively came up with a new pricing mechanism that allowed us to service that smaller end of the market in a more, cost-effective way for the client, but which didn't detract, I suppose, from the underlying risk of what it is we do on a daily basis, which is effectively stand between those clients and the public, and stand between those clients and the regulator, and say we think that these guys are okay, or these girls are okay, and we're happy to allow them to promote into the UK under our name. So that's the kind of the new market segment, SMEs, I suppose you would call them in the crypto space. I think our proposition is very unique in that context, and yeah, I'm delighted that I think we've been able to get that product live, and it seems to have had interest. We've had some really good conversations, haven't we, with new clients on that basis. And let's just see how it goes. It's at at worst an experiment, and at best strategic brilliance on our part.
And in the spirit of talking about how these things come about and launching, running, growing, scaling businesses, um, probably useful to touch a little bit on those market segments and the pricing point, because there's lots said, lots of theory, lots of people who will claim that they got it right and this is how you do it again in a repeatable format. But the reality is that that initial high cost came about because the firms that recognized the rules were coming in early and that had to address this because they were very much on the radar of regulators because of their size were the large ones, because they've got money and they've got the resource and they see it and they can deal with it. And so that naturally evolves into pricing from the Section 21 approvers perspective being high, because of course you're dealing with big firms. You've got big profiles and lots of clients and lots of tokens being issued. So that's kind of how that happens. And then once that gets a little bit more embedded, then as you say, you can sort of think about how you would approach this for the smaller firms who, in some cases wouldn't even have known these regulations were coming because they're overseas and who's sat in San Francisco reading FCA handbooks. They're not really doing that, are they?
No, I think that's fair. And the other thing I suppose to think about, certainly something that I laboured over quite a lot in my own thinking in this context was, if you look at kind of classic business um, strategic thinking or classic business methodology, you would say that you can't be all things to all people. So either, you're big, you go after the big clients, you provide this white glove, high end, high touch point service, or you lean it out. You go EasyJet, you you bring all costs down so that you can bring the cost to the client down. Your Greg's ultimately. Um, Cheap service, very low margin, target that. And in a way, one of the wrestles I suppose that we've had is straddling both of those. So if thinking about just being, I suppose, transparent about our thinking and just being careful, I suppose, that we are able to do what we want to do, which is to help these clients with a service that works, and not go, bust in the process because we've brought on loads of low value clients in a monetary sense, but did so from a too high a cost base to make that work. So, that's one of the sort of strategic things we've had to, I suppose, worry about in this context. And it'll be interesting, I suppose, I'm sure you'll feel the same way. And, it'll be interesting to watch that happen over the next 12 months and see where we land.
Yeah, and I guess another point on that is, well, there's 2 points on there. One is the way that we built the business and where we see it going. So when you talk about scaling, that's kind of what we're doing here, of course. But there's this kind of sense, I think, when people talk about scaling, that it means growing quickly. And I don't think quick is necessarily the answer. I don't think you need to be super slow because that's not necessarily great either, unless what you want is a little lifestyle business. But I think measured growth is the answer there. So you can try these things and see how they work out, but without causing yourself so much risk that you go pop in the process. And then the second point is, and I'm bound to say this, is on the financials. So if you only focus on all the cool, interesting stuff, as feels like to most people, which is winning clients and getting business in and looking at price and doing deals, that's great. But unless you've got a really detailed view on what money's coming in and what's going out and what you expect that to be over the next 12 months, if you can project, and we tend to be cautious about what might leave and cautious about what might come in so that we've got a good balanced view. If you project then what resource you'll need to do that, from financial resources and non-financial resources, then you can see what that looks like in the future. And the beauty with numbers is, notwithstanding some of these projections and forecasts, as long as you're careful about it, numbers tend not to lie. And so that gives you a good view of where you're at. And if you see things going off, you can react really quickly because you've got a good handle on that, rather than just sort of winging it and going all out and let's scale and grow super fast and see where we end up, which I think is where some firms can fall down a little bit when they're new.
Yeah, and definitely my top tip for anyone who's sort of thinking about starting a business or is in the early stages of that is you need to get a Wayne, because my eyes glaze over at the numbers, and Wayne seems to thrive on building the world's largest spreadsheets. So, between us, I think we're quite a good match in that context. And if you don't have that, you aren't going to have a full picture of where the business is at from a financial perspective.
And I think it's being honest about that as well. So just to make the point, right, we talk about this business being about 18 months, 2 years old. This isn't 18 months, 2 years of work that's led to this point. There were probably between us, well, no, each sort of 15, 20, 25 years prior to that got us to this point as well. And some of that will be just exposure to financials and businesses and acquisitions and running stuff and et cetera, that's taught us that. That's how we ended up with it. And then the second point, I guess, is that we're not trying to sell the business or for any purpose in terms of selling it to an acquirer or selling it to an investor, where the tendency can be to make it look as good as possible so that it's a really compelling proposition. Now, that's fine. That's what you need to do. But the danger is that you then start to take those really optimistic numbers and use them in your spending and your projections, and that's where you get problems like cash flow, or the sales don't come through as you expected because nothing ever quite happens as expected on that front, does it?
No,
And then you run into trouble a little bit.
and we're definitely lucky, I suppose, that this is a business that didn't need outside funding to get going. We didn't need an investor. We didn't need shareholders to be accountable to. We're just accountable to ourselves, and we get to do this in a way that's measured and comfortable for the way we want to do it, rather than the way somebody else who is only seeing the financial outputs year on year is looking to kind of put that slant into the business.
Yeah, for sure. And that looks an important one because there are two things that I hear a lot that I find quite frustrating when you hear stuff about businesses being launched and the successes and stuff. One is that it talks about the birth of the business often, and so people think, well, that's taken 2 years, it's done really well, so I should only wait 2 years, and neglects what we said a minute ago, which is there might be 20 years prior to that that have led to that point. Um, and then the second sort of point has just completely escaped me, but it was going to be absolutely golden. So I'm going to pause for a minute while I try to remember what the second point was, and I'll let you carry on for a second. Oh, that was it. Look, it was look. Look.
Okay,
Was,
all right, I'll give you
yeah,
that. I was just going to let
yeah.
a pregnant pause settle over this conversation while you squirmed. So yeah, you're lucky that you found it out.
Yes, yeah. It was look. So yeah, there was the look piece on the crypto side because regulations came out and we could deal with them. And then to the point about there being new market segments, then we get funds, don't we? And I'll let you pick up on that while I recover
Oh,
from that
that middle-aged dementia setting in.
moment of panic. Yeah,
Yeah, so yeah, we you're right. We've got a new product online as well now, which is the fun stuff. And anyone that watched the podcast last time about the OFR will know what that's all about. But ultimately, you know, we you talk about luck, right? We set this business up to do the crypto asset financial promotion stuff, and that wasn't the original intent of this business at all. We were slogging it away on the kind of SaaS product that wasn't quite working out for us. And then, hallelujah moment, these rules get published, and we realize that we are exactly the people to solve for that. It's the Venn diagram of our skills and interest and experience, all in one place. And then, almost as if divine intervention were to happen, a new set of rules come out, bringing in to scope of the financial promotions rules investment funds, something for which both of us have many more years of knowledge and experience than in the crypto. Not to say we don't have it in crypto, but funds was where we both started our careers. And suddenly it was like, not only do you get to do the thing you're already doing as a business, but you also get to do it in the context of a product that you intimately know. And so, great, we were off to the races. And, we talk about luck, more luck would have it. We had exactly the right permissions, potentially one of the only firms to have exactly the right permissions to be able to do that work. And so, Wayne, I think someone had described it to you as, oh, you're from that firm that has the ginormous open goal in front of you. And all you have to do is kind of kick the ball in the net. And that's sort of what it feels like a little bit. It's not to say it's not, difficult work involved, and you've got to make sure it all pulls together. But yeah, frankly, luck has had a great deal to do with our ability to continue to trade as an ongoing concern.
yeah. And I think the other point is the way that we do this stuff, because almost everything we're doing is played out in front of the regulator and industry. So I think that opportunity coming up that just ticked all the right boxes at the right time and looks like a really good one. We can only take advantage of it, as you say, because of what we've done and what we know. And for me, the real advantage of having this come to us early on both fronts is that we get now to kind of set the standard for that. So it feels like an area where, and I know the FCA worry about this, where it could be a low friction, easy way of unregulated firms just coming into the UK were it not done properly. And that bothers me as much as anything. We wouldn't want it to be like that, because then the whole regime starts to look a bit different and gets the wrong reputation. Whereas in the case of crypto and funds, we now are saying, well, this is how we think it should be done, and we think it should be done this way because we're used to it and we know what the risks are and we know what the regulator's looking for, so we can set it up on that basis. And by that I mean it's not just a piece of paper crossing your desk with a stamp that goes on it and away we go, we take our fees. There's an awful lot more to it than that, and I think that's an important point that we shouldn't be overlooking.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're right. There's a chance that if done badly, firms marketing from abroad could just see this as a cheaper way into the UK market without having to set up shop here fully and deal with the full-on authorization process that would entail. Um, but you've spent too long, Wayne, in this industry with the people in the UK who are authorized that do the business in the way it was originally intended to be regulated. So I don't think it will be within you to kind of let people cheat that system, because you've probably got, I think, a little bit too much respect for the people that do it the other way around.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. But you're right. It is. There is a lot of luck involved there. So if these things land on your desk and you're able to take advantage, then that's positive. And that comes back to the point earlier about having, you have a plan. Of course, we have a plan, but you can't be a slave to it. And the fact that we are nimble and it's us making the decisions means that we can react to changes in the market and do stuff as it arrives on the desk without trying to explain why the numbers that we set out 6 months ago look different or are coming from different sources than we expected, without trying to justify it and say, well, no, we're not changing our minds, we're flitting around. It's all with good reason, good purpose, and good long-term results.
Yeah, it's funny. We haven't sort of spoken about this yet, but certainly over that kind of Christmas, New Year period, I always spend loads of time like reflecting on what we've done, trying to figure out what went well, trying to figure out where I think we still have gaps in what we do, and just trying to absorb other viewpoints. And I came across I forget where it was, some advice that basically said, the key to making sure that everyone who works with you and for you is happy is that you have clear roles for them and responsibilities, and that you as a business have very clear strategic goal that's codified in one of those like value statements that a business always tries to write, but always ends up writing terribly with just vague words like we want to be, we want to have it work with integrity and all that kind of weird stuff that doesn't really quantify anything. And definitely, like, the book was talking about the charity that was set up. The name, I forget who set it up, but the purpose of the charity was to go into New Orleans after Katrina, and the purpose of the charity was to build 150 um, eco-friendly, cheap homes for people in the lower ninth district. And it was so specific and it was so easily measurable that you could say every decision you made, is that decision going to reach that goal, or is it going to take us off somewhere over here? And there was another example about a firm that said, when trying to navigate the dichotomy between clients and shareholders, we always choose to help clients, and that helped make decision making within the business easier as well, because you could always say, okay, who is this benefiting largely if we go this route or that route? And if it was clients, it was the right answer. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about, what ours would be in that context. And I don't think I have, it yet, but it's been an interesting exercise to kind of work through.
Yeah, and it sort of evolves that the need for that, I think, as businesses grow. So one of the interesting points for a business is that often they think about the end objective. It might be an exit, or it might be growth to a particular point. Often there's a financial objective to it, and so you sort of miss the journey a little bit. And really that's all we've got, because if you even meet whatever the end objective is that you're setting, so what? Then what? You kind of, well, okay, it's something different now. But the route that you take to get there is the important bit. And I think when you're very small, it's much easier to be more nimble. I wouldn't say we're so nimble that we're not reasonably focused. Like if someone came along with something completely different, then we'd probably just not do it because don't have the capacity. It's not in the wheelhouse. It's all fairly focused on certain areas, albeit different market segments. But I think as you get bigger, that kind of need to have a clear message, but that actually means something to people. Like you say, it's not just some chat GPT generated mission vision statement about engagement and everything is about the customer and all of this sort of stuff that's just meaningless to people. But as you get bigger, you do need that for sure, because the distance between the people doing the work and the people that are running the business and calling the shots gets wider and wider, and you sort of lose that personality and that meaning a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And I've heard a lot recently from business podcasts and that kind of content around um, the riches are in the, to use the American terminology, niches. Um, you really need to niche down your business to find where you add real value. And I think actually this business is a very niche business. There are clearly, because there's only so many of us that have been able to figure it out and actually do it. Um, and we've been very lucky to have found that niche for ourselves that draws on our very unique historic backgrounds in professional life. Uh, but we've been sort of doubly lucky in as much as we've been able to find two niches in the same niche. The fact that we could do crypto on the one hand, which we know and love and understand and are able to implement an action, and then to be almost gifted the opportunity to apply all of that to funds, another niche with a whole new set of customer profiles and client types, is really like such a kind of fortunate position, I think, for us to be in. What you talk about the journey, I'm really enjoying discovering how we can do that, because getting Engelbert off the ground was one challenge in itself. Like, how can we get ourselves known and out there so that people know that we do this from a standing start in a totally new regime with totally new clients, versus how do we get something going where we're so confident that we are the right and possibly only solution for this in a world where we know people over here in the investment fund space, probably mostly in the UK, but we actually need to target all of those ones in Europe. Um, that's a different kind of challenge, and it's interesting to, yeah, I'm really enjoying that kind of journey of doing both, trying to figure out the strategic and BD initiatives to make those happen and to keep those businesses turning.
And I guess as well, it comes down to people, because people are all different and what works for them and what they can cope with. Because with that, we've had a lot of uncertainty. So you've got to know whether you can cope with not always knowing where the money's going to come from at the end of the month when you're very early and new, and can you deal with that? And it could be amazing or it could be terrible, and you just don't really know the answer for all the planning. So you've got to be able to cope with that, and that just doesn't work for some people. Some people just need that security, which is fine. And then the other bit is the thing with the niches is that they are so niche, unique, odd. You can't really, well, you can very rarely plan for that unless it's a sort of an established niche and you can see someone else doing it. You can go after it, but you can't really plan for it. And so I doubt either of us, thinking myself, when I'm applying for this junior admin role at 18 years old for this fund group, was never. I mean, that wasn't on the cards to begin with, but that wasn't. And so what I'm then going to do is be there for years and years and learn about funds and pick up some financial stuff in the meantime and a bit of investment experience. And then what I'll do is I'll pick up this financial promotions regime for crypto asset firms in around about 2023, and we'll see how it goes from there. It's never going to happen. So there are some people that are better suited and will want that security and that clear line of sight towards the end goal, which is to be whatever it is, a particular specific profession. Or there'll be others, like I think probably we found ourselves to be, where that just doesn't necessarily float the boat. So you're happy to take the uncertainty and the risk and to see where it ends up.
Yeah, for sure. And I've definitely always felt, and as I've said to many people, like I've always felt like I've seen the other side of the matrix doing this. You spend your life, as I did as a lawyer, in a very defined career and a career progression, and you're very much, in a job. And yes, the end goal is partnership, but it's not ownership in that sense. It's you become part of a very large committee of people that direct a very large business in that sense. So you're still effectively an employee in that context. And I feel like I stepped away from there and we did this thing and took almost control of our lives and were able to leverage tools and people and consultants to help us deliver it in a way that means I don't have to be sat every day looking in the minutiae of everything that we do. There are no people that can do that for us, and I feel like I've sort of won the lottery in that, and I've seen the other side of it. And of course, why wouldn't everybody do this? But yeah, you're right. The more I've sort of sat with that thought, the more I have realised that there are people that just don't want that from their life. They want that structure and that security and that knowledge that there's a paycheck at the end of the month. And
or are not ready for it, because as I say, there's a lot of years gone into getting to the point where it's possible. I'm not saying you have to do that time first. It's not a given at all, but still, I think when I think back to what I experienced from 18 years old onwards, and all of the sort of opportunities and the variety and what that looked like, and the journey and the good and the bad and the indifferent and so on, there are bits there that I often think about when we're hiring and helping and delivering and talking to the staff that we've now got. Is you want them to have that similar sort of journey. You don't want people that are just going to be sat there plodding away doing the same thing. That's interesting work at the outset because it's new to people and it's learning. That's the key bit, it's learning. But you want them to progress and learn the next bit and the next bit and have a bit of agency over what the next bit even is, and even try it and not like it and move on to something different, but to try and get that balance between a business that runs efficiently, but one that's there to help the people try some stuff and do some things that they weren't expecting to do, and learn some separate stuff, and just build this sort of quite rounded, varied set of skills, so that they can be the next people that go and launch whatever the niche will be in 5, 10, 15 years time.
Yeah, you're right. And I was super excited this morning to hear that. I think I overheard a conversation in the office just behind that. One of our employees is starting to explore like coding and trying to put together a website, and I was super excited by that. And I know that there are definitely places that would, or there's certainly certain types of employers that would look down on that and say, your time here is to be spent entirely on the role and doing that job description that we've very clearly given you. But actually, I sort of love that the fact that people are trying to explore new things and learn complementary skill sets that then can be put together in different ways, for them and for us, but definitely more for them. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, cool. I feel like we've come up with the beginning of a little divergence here, Gareth. I feel like the Clear, Fair, Not Misleading podcast, we've got so much to say on that in terms of the crypto and the funds and the technicalities. There's loads of conversations we've had here where there's some clarity forming and some getting more opaque, if anything. And then separately, just talk about running a business, not to do it like we're any kind of sages on this matter, but there's probably some interesting stuff. Maybe we need to do 2 podcasts, Gareth. What do you reckon?
Crikey. I mean, to be fair, you viewers who are regular will have noticed slightly different surroundings on my end, at least. And, I'm sat on this very squishy piece of purple velvet. So, yeah, certainly it would be great to, I'd love for us to be able to create more content this year to chat. If it's helpful for someone, great. I don't do it with any intent of what the outcome might be, but to use this space for people to come and join us and to come and chat, and we can, pick their brains and sort of put all those pieces together. And if there's promotional stuff in there and regulatory stuff in there, great. And if it's more about like, the experiences within business and all that kind of stuff that we also engage and enjoy and talking about, then for sure, very happy to create that divergence.
It's like you say, maybe we're just talking at clouds. I don't know, but
I'm happy with that.
That we're talking. It feels quite therapeutic anyway. It sort of reminds you what we've done and learned, if nothing else.
There's much less pressure when you talk at clouds than when you talk at people. So I'm very happy to talk at clouds. And over time maybe we'll get some ferns and we can we can create a real therapy catch here, at least for one of us.
Yes, yeah. And I'd say we'll make a pact, right? The day that we start sounding like the mega corp business podcast, then that's the day that we need to just end it.
In a purely podcasting sense.
Yes, exactly.
All right, that's a deal, Wayne. Thank you.
Cool, good stuff.
Nice. Well, it was nice to chat. And who knows what we'll chat about next time? But
The plan is there is no plan, Gareth. Enjoy the journey.
I love it. We're in.
Bye for now.